The Philadelphia Eagles will upset the Kansas City Chiefs, and Saquon Barkley will carry them there. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the mastermind, Ross Jackson. It's a Super Bowl edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We're going to tell you who we think wins the Super Bowl Triple Crown, leading passing, leading receiver, leading rusher. We're going to talk about our favorite prop bets in this matchup, but we'll start with our predictions for the game. Before we dive in, do want to thank you for making the Locked On NFL podcast your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. It's a FanDuel Friday, Ross. And again, I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win.
I am on the side opposite you, Tyler. I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll probably break it down a little bit more later. But, man, I need to see the three-peat.
Listen, I've been on the side of history for multiple weeks, but I've gotten to the day when it's time to make the decision. And Ross, I feel in my bones that something's coming here. And I think one of the big reasons that the Eagles might be able to do something big here is because the Chiefs will feel the pressure of a three-peat in their bones. And our guys at Crossover Thursday, Locked On Eagles, Locked On Chiefs, talked about those nerves.
Pat Mahomes at the parade last year was already talking about a three-peat. How much is the team thinking about that right now?
I think they're probably thinking about it a little bit, but I don't think it's going to really give them any pressure. I think when you look at their season this year and how they played, and every single game, well, just about every single game being close, one-score games, never scoring over 32 points or never scoring over 32 points in a game, and that was in the playoffs against the Bills. They have seemingly struggled by media standards the entire season. And to be back in the Super Bowl, knowing that all they got to do is win one more game, they have to show up, they have to win one game. And the nice thing for the Chiefs, and the thing that benefits them the most, is yes, they have Patrick Mahomes, who's the best player in the NFL, but they also have a roster of probably 30 to 40 guys that know what this experience is like. They've been here before. They have two rosters. They have two draft classes full of guys that have played in nothing but Super Bowls, and getting ready to add a third at this point.
I don't care if you played in Super Bowls before. I just don't care, Ross. Going for a three-peat means more. And there's more nerves, and there's more excitement, and you're going for history, and that added pressure matters to me. I will take the Eagles plus 1.5 as underdogs in this game. We went over we did the Super Bowl by the numbers on yesterday's show with the Data Queen. Of course, had to flex that muscle. Michelle,
of course,
knows her numbers better than anyone else, the Data Queen, and she showed me some numbers that only 5 teams before this year's Philadelphia Eagles since 2000. Only 5 teams had less than 200 passing yards per game and went to the Super Bowl. 4 out of those 5 teams won because the run game travels. It's the year of the run game. It's the return of the running back. Saquon Barkley, best running back season ever. Boom. Eagles win.
Oh, that's pretty compelling. I'm not going to lie. But here's what I am going to put up just in terms of the nerves thing, right? This idea that a third Super Bowl feels different than a second Super Bowl, which feels different than a first Super Bowl. Well, this team has been to the Super Bowl a lot, Tyler, over the course of the last little bit. And the streaks of AFC championship games, that never caught up on them. The pressure of getting to the Super Bowl never caught up on them. I don't even just look at this as this team is playing in a third straight Super Bowl. I'm looking at this season. This is a team that won 15 games and that went on to win all the rest of its play. They had several opportunities to choke. They had several opportunities to feel the pressure, knowing that three-peat was on the way. I don't think that just because you get to the moment or you get to the precipice that this is going to actually stop this team, which is filled with veteran players. Yes, there are some young players, as Chris highlighted, the rookie classes that have done this and have been here before, but they've done it. They've seen it. You've got Patrick Mahomes. You've got Chris Jones. You've got Andy Reid. All these guys are going to be able to lead the way on every side of the ball when it comes to their ability to be able to manage all of that pressure, set the example, lead by example, and lead with the rah-rah too. All those guys can bring it. And so I don't know, man. I don't buy it. I don't buy that the pressure is going to be enough. But I'll tell you what, the numbers that you and Michelle went over, those are compelling. And you're right, this is the year of the run game. So if Saquon Barkley starts running like crazy like he has been all season, then it might end up turning into a long day for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I just can't see them coming up short here, especially with Kendrick Lamar in the house, man. Like, you got to perform. You got to perform.
Oh, God, get out of here with that. This is a Drake podcast. But let me say this. I agree with you that they've handled the pressure well so far, but Super Bowl pressure is different than anything else. So I don't think that anything else could compare, even though they have, been very poised throughout the year. What I will say is, like you said, Saquon Barkley, the big thing for me is the Kansas City Chiefs have not been able to stop the run in their last 4 games. They have given up over 150 yards 3 times. They gave up 200 at one point. Even the Texans, who could barely move on offense for most of the year and fired their offensive coordinator, ran for 148 yards. So we talk about who's going to win, but for me, looking at the MVP, I think it's going to be Saquon Barkley, and I think he's got a great opportunity to do it. And not only would Saquon Barkley playing well obviously help the Eagles score points and be who they are, but it helps them keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, which makes Saquon Barkley even more valuable in Crossover Thursday. Locked on Eagles, Locked on Chiefs. Mention that. Number
2 key is control time of possession. I think those two things go hand in hand. Then you can let Saquon Barkley take over this game. The best way to stop Pat Mahomes, I think, is to keep Pat Mahomes off the football field. If you can have those, back in the December game against Pittsburgh, they have a 10-minute drive in the fourth quarter where they drove the length of the field and just ran it down the Steelers' throats. If you can get a lead, make the Chiefs play from behind, you can then pin your ears back, lean on Saquon Barkley in the offensive line.
And that's exactly what the game plan needs to be. So I think we get a scenario where the Eagles not only get big plays from Saquon Barkley as the Chiefs try to pack the line of scrimmage, he makes 1 or 2 guys miss, and then there's no one there, and he takes it to the house. So you'll get some big plays from Saquon Barkley, but also that's how they'll beat the Chiefs, is they'll salt them away with that run game with Saquon Barkley 4 or 5 yards of carry in the fourth quarter, putting it home like they couldn't do 2 years ago. Saquon Barkley, my MVP pick.
I like that. Listen, I got to go chalk here. I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. I think it has to be Patrick Mahomes. If the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win, he's going to be the MVP, right? Like, there's no doubt about that. I can't elect Ron Torbert. Otherwise, I would pick him. But, the real thing for me here is when it comes to Steve Spagnuolo's defense, eventually Jalen Hurts is going to have to drop back to pass. They're not going to be able to give it to Saquon Barkley every single down. And so when he drops back to pass, can Spags end up getting the ball back to his quarterback? You can play keep away with the run game all day long, but if you work yourself into a 3rd and medium, a 3rd and long, you have to be able to drop back. And there's no fancy stuff that happens there. You're probably not running play action on 3rd and 7. You're not doing those things. And so you have to be able to drop back and actually get the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands. So that's an opportunity for Spags to make things challenging, go in with his disguise, but also come through with his pressure and cause some of those turnovers to get the ball back to my MVP pick in Patrick Mahomes.
Well, fair enough. Jalen Hurts is going to have to throw, and I'll tell you why that makes me even more confident, and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags, green flags we should avoid, but what if we focused more on identifying the positive signs in our relationships? Those green flags. If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them, actively practice them, and even embody the green flag energy yourself, whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself. Therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. Therapy helps you develop healthy boundaries, it improves your communication, it empowers you to set clear expectations and express your needs in relationships. Betterhelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch therapists, you can do so at no extra cost. I think it's really important to have a good relationship with your therapist, and BetterHelp allows that to happen. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon, and you're going to get 10% off your first month today. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Ross, let's continue today's Super Bowl preview edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I can't believe we're here, Ross. We've made it to the final game. But with that being said, you talked about Jalen Hurts. I want to get into some of our player props here, some of the individual player props outside of just what we think is going to happen in the game. And Jalen Hurts is where I want to start, because you mentioned eventually that Jalen Hurts is going to have to throw the football. Well, going back to some of the data that me and Michelle talked about on a recent episode, Jalen Hurts has averaged 280 yards per game against the Kansas City Chiefs in 3 games. He has played his absolute best in the biggest moments. And my guy Louie from Locked On Eagles in the Crossover Thursday episode, Jalen Hurts needs to get a little bit more credit.
Another storyline for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts has an opportunity to really cement himself as a true elite quarterback. And yeah, there were times this year he had up and down performances as a passing quarterback, but I really do think he's elite in a different way, more of a Russell Wilson, a Cam Newton. Yeah, it's not the same as a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen or even a Pat Mahomes, but if he gets a ring, and he's been to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years. He had one of the best Super Bowl performances I've ever seen 2 years ago. His playoff win percentage is up there with the all-time greats. Yeah, again, you might still not put him ahead of, you're not going to put him ahead of Mahomes, maybe not even Burrow, Lamar, or Allen, but I don't know how you can debate anymore that he's in that top tier. At least that's in my opinion if he wins this game.
Look, I think the inconsistency of Jalen Hurts is why you can't put him in the top tier. But at the end of the day, he plays great when he plays against the Chiefs. And in big moments, he plays great. So Jalen Hurts over 211.5 passing yards is an absolute lock, in my opinion. Now, Ross, listen, you better be out of the gate better than the Chiefs might be early on. There you go. You're with us now.
My bad. Yeah, I think that's great. I just think that's accompanied by 2 or 3 interceptions along the way, or 2 or 3 turnovers on the way. And that's why he's got to throw the way that he's got to throw to get over that 211. Fair. So I do like that, though, because the more situations that they're in like that, the more that the score is going to be evened up, or potentially even getting away from Philly. That's going to force Jalen Hurts to have to throw the football a little bit more. So I agree with the over on that. I do think that the other thing that I look at in this one is the pressure that Spags is going to try to get on Jalen Hurts, because yeah, he's performed well against Spags' Chiefs defense. Spags been there since 2019, but Spagnuolo's defense here in 2024 is simply different. So what I'm looking for here is the pressure that they're able to get on. Now, a lot of times when you talk about Steve Spagnuolo's defense, you're talking about the strategic calls for the blitz, right? Generating pressure, supplemental pressure, pressure packages, all those things. But really the guy that I'm looking at here is Chris Jones on the interior. And look, I'll flip this over to the other side too. It's not like Philly doesn't have a pretty good big guy in the middle too, right? Don't let me just make this all one-sided. But I do like right now FanDuel has a player to record a sack prop, and Chris Jones is plus 136. That would allow you to turn $100 into $136. Not a bad situation there, or bring you in $136. So not a bad situation there. So I like Chris Jones for a sack. Jalen Carter, by the way, the Philly defensive tackle we just referred to, plus 116, turn 100 and then bring in 116. Not bad there either. So those 2 guys for me are going to be the story of the pass rush when it comes to these 2 teams generating pressure. But I like Chris Jones to get home up against Jalen Hurts.
You know, I found it crazy when we were doing our research for the show that Chris Jones had the 4th best odds to get the sack. I'm like, what are we talking about here? Yeah. He's the best defensive player in the game. I ranked him as my second best player in the entire game, besides Patrick Mahomes.
I thought he was going to be top odds. I thought he was going to be top odds for this.
Exactly. So the value there is fantastic. And not only that, but the Eagles' interior offensive line is a little bit banged up, and the guys talked about that on Crossover Thursday.
It's how do you attack the injured interior of the Eagles' offensive line? I don't want to take anything away from the tackles, but the interior three, you got to put your effort there. A, to take away the easy yards straight up the gut for Saquon, and B, to make them get out of that easy, get the ball out kind of passing that I think Jalen actually thrives in. So get him off of his tempo, get pressure in his face, attack the A-gaps. That's job number one here. And I think as much as the left tackle for the Chiefs is probably a question mark, what the pass rush the Chiefs can do against the interior of the Eagles offensive line, I think is just as much up for question.
I agree 100%. We look at the Eagles offensive line and we think about it being so dominant, but with the injuries that they've dealt with, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, and guys who are, in and out of the lineup and look hobbled. I mean, in that NFC title game, they both look hobbled at different times. It will give the Chiefs an opportunity with their pressure and then with the just individual rush talent of Chris Jones to get in there. There are some other player props I really like, though. Devonta Smith, over 52.5 yards. I could get into more why I like Devonta Smith so much in this matchup. I'll save that for a brief moment, but I really do love that, and that pairs perfectly with my over on Jalen Hurts. I do want to look at the Chiefs side. I like the under on Kareem Hunt, 43.5 yards. I just don't think that the Chiefs are going to be able to run, and Kareem Hunt, while being a good player, and he's really done well for the Chiefs this year as a role player, I don't think that he's good enough to go over 40 yards in the Super Bowl, especially when you have Samaje Perine and Isaiah Pacheco still rotating in. So I like the under on Kareem Hunt, 43.5 rushing yards. Another player that I want to point out, though, DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, I have been shocked by how he's been minimized by the Chiefs in the playoffs, barely playing for them. Juju Smith-Schuster is playing more, and I don't think anybody, if you asked him on the street, Family Feud style, who's a better player, Juju Smith-Schuster or DeAndre Hopkins? I think it'd be 99 to 100% DeAndre Hopkins, but the Chiefs disagree, and they use Juju Smith more. But I think in a big pressure situation against high-level cornerbacks, DeAndre Hopkins is going to make a play. So I'm going with DeAndre Hopkins plus 650 anytime touchdown. I think the veteran makes a big play in the biggest moment of his career.
Yep. I got a couple of fun ones as well. There's always the fun ones. This is the Super Bowl, right? We call it betting Christmas because of all the different things they have going on. I like tails for the opening coin toss. I'm an always tails, never fails
I prefer
guy.
Sonic.
Oh, there you go. I love that. I love that. Did you know that Tails' name is a pun for like miles per hour? It's like miles power or something like that. Yeah, like it's specifically built to be a pun on miles per hour. Anyway, so I like Tails there. I like blue for the color of the Gatorade that will be dumped on the head coach, the winning head coach. And I can't not take this FanDuel prop that is plus 10,000, Tyler, for Lane Johnson to score a touchdown. Have you ever seen, I'm sure you've seen Waterboy, right? Bobby Boucher.
Yes, of course.
All that good
of
stuff.
Course.
And remember that line at the end where it's like, can't hold anything back now, last game of the year.
Can't hold anything back, Dan.
That's it. Can't hold anything back here, bud. You got to go for it. And so I like Lane Johnson. I'll put $1 down, turn it into 100. I'll put $10 down, turn it into 1,000. That's fine. I'll take that easy. So Lane Johnson for a touchdown on what we might end up calling the next Philly special. I'll put down a little bit of Skrilla on that to come out on top. I'm fine with that.
And that's why the Eagles are going to win, because they didn't hold anything back. With that being said, who's going to win the Super Bowl Triple Crown? Who's going to lead in passing, lead in rushing, lead in receiving? We'll give you our best combinations. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is a FanDuel Friday here on the Locked On NFL podcast. So, of course, it is sponsored by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds to feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens. and the app is super easy to navigate. Truly, FanDuel has the best looking app in the marketplace. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. So make sure that you download the app right now or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game, where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard for you to win. And you pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. Obviously, I like the more on Devonta Smith receiving yards. I'm going to go more on the Travis Kelce catches as well. Again, pair that with Patrick Mahomes to throw for more than 1 yard, and you are going to be set up for a win. And when you win, the cash can be in your account in as little as 15 minutes. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, Ross, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. Talked about our picks, our MVPs, our player props, but now we want to have a little fun with a combination. And we're going to look for the Triple Crown winner. This is available on FanDuel, where you guess who is going to lead the game in passing yards, lead the game in receiving yards, and lead the game in rushing yards. Before we give you our picks, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. It's been an incredible season here on Locked On NFL with our new format. Definitely do appreciate all the support and all the feedback. With that in mind, make sure that you check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins in the barbershop. He's going to have a ton more Super Bowl content for you as well. But Ross, looking at combinations, I mentioned it earlier, but there's a key aspect of my combination that I think gives you great odds, great value, and it's proven to be a winning pick. I'm going with Patrick Mahomes, leading passer, Saquon Barkley, leading rusher, and Devonta Smith as the leading receiver, plus 1,200. And my guy Louie from Locked On Eagles talked about why Devonta Smith is such a key X factor.
But there's some X factors that are underratedly important for the Eagles on Sunday, and one of them I had the opportunity to talk to at Media Night yesterday at the Superdome, and it's Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith, funny enough, actually has averaged more yards per game against the Kansas City Chiefs than any player in Kansas City's franchise history. Devonta has averaged 107 yards even per game against a Steve Spagnuolo defense. As a rookie in 2021, had an incredible game in September. Of course, the Super Bowl has 100 yards receiving in that matchup. That big play in the fourth quarter helped set up Jalen Hurts for the game-tying touchdown with 5 minutes to go. Last year in Arrowhead, makes the game-winning reception to allow the Eagles to score the go-ahead touchdown with, again, a little under 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Devonta is so important in this game.
What else do I need to say? Shout out my guy, Legacy Louie, putting it all on the line.
Legacy Lou.
Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts go nuts against the Chiefs every time. I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but they're going to do it again. Give me Patrick Mahomes, but give me Devonta Smith, Saquon Barkley, plus 1,200, Triple Crown.
Yeah, I love the odds on that too. Like plus 1,200 is kind of, that's a steal, really.
Got to.
The favorites in this one is all the chalk, right? Patrick Mahomes leading passing yards, Travis Kelce to lead in receiving yards, and then Saquon Barkley leading rushing yards. Even that one's plus 600. So if you're looking for a safe one, that's a pretty good one. If you want to take it a little bit of a step up, I'll give you the one that I like, Tyler. Patrick Mahomes passing yards, Saquon Barkley rushing yards, and then Xavier Worthy in receiving yards. Because it takes one big catch and run. Doesn't even have to be a deep pass down the field kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's the crossing routes. It's the catch and run. This is what Kansas City's been doing all season. Kansas City's not been a downfield team. They've been explosive, but they've been doing it on a lot of the catch and run, working close, condensing the offense, getting the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands quickly. I think that's one of the things that maybe is why the Jalen Carter odds maybe could be a little bit lower than they are because of how quickly Kansas City gets the ball out when it comes to a player to get a sack. But I like the fact that you get one big play from Xavier Worthy, and all of a sudden he's leading this game in receiving yards without really having to be this big, downfield moment or having a win on a big route or having to deliver the football down the field in a clutch situation, or even without being a consistent part of the offense. Because I think that's been one of the things that has been something that has stagnated that Kansas City offense is they haven't consistently had the weapons at wide receiver. Everybody's kind of produced in different ways, but you never know who's really going to pop up. So at this point, I think about last year, San Francisco 49ers. Remember, Jawan Jennings was the guy that popped off, the wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. I like Xavier Worthy to potentially be that guy for Kansas City this year.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too. And, it may not seem on its face like it lends to him leading in yards. A lot of his pass attempts throughout the playoffs have been like 5 yards in front of the line of scrimmage or below there. But at the end of the day, it's all about opportunity and getting the ball in his hands. That's what they're going to look to do, whether it's downfield, whether, it's behind the line of scrimmage. They're going to get the ball in his hands, and opportunity creates production. That's what's most important. So, very curious, I guess, to see how they use him and how he can operate. But I think that's certainly a good bet for you. But with that being said, that's it. That's our Super Bowl preview here. The Super Bowl is here. It's been a crazy long season. Excited to see who comes out on top. I hope more than anything, regardless of the winner, we get a good, entertaining game, which is exactly what they gave us
and
2 years ago.
An excellent halftime show. And an excellent
show. Could have been better. There are other New Orleans artists who could have been involved, would have made it better, Kendrick opened his mouth, though. It's time to give him a Grammy and a Super Bowl, just like Greg said.
5 Grammys, actually. 5.
Yeah. Industry plant, if I've ever seen it. Anyways, that is going to do it as we fly off the rails on a casual Friday. But thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed for year-round free NFL content. For me, your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, my co-host, the Mastermind Ross Jackson. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay safe out there.